In this series of short PowerPoint presentations on evaluation, what I put up in red to remind myself is the question that is really important to ask. What is being evaluated here? Often the answer is an education program or a development program. But we need to learn to actually look more deeply into this and say, well, what is being evaluated by the participants here? And here we're looking at Evaluation for ESD. We're looking at the competences that will develop in an education program, and we're looking at the matters of concern. But the main matter of concern in ESD and evaluation is that the people engaged in ESD are engaged in an evaluative endeavor. Sure, we can evaluate an education program, but often that loses sight of the participants as evaluators and the evaluation work that they're doing in the learning-led change. So often we manage this by providing specifications of competency, particularly the reflexive competency in the conventional pedagogy. And one of the key tools here is the Sustainable Development Goals wheel. But starting with competencies, as ethics-led learning to change, key competencies for sustainability have been specified mainly through Wieck's work. Dahan was earlier, and now UNESCO has these 2, 4, 6, 8 competencies that are really useful for planning a teaching and learning program. And in the work that Helen has done in Finland, the transversal competencies was a very important innovation in Finland, where they specified that subject disciplines are really important sources of knowledge for people to be able to recognize concerns. And here in Finland, they've developed this table or this circle to look at the development of the human being through the curriculum and all of the other elements that can be taken into account in a subject discipline. So that through learning a subject discipline, they acquire the knowledge necessary to be able to recognize concerns, to be able to assess value and to deliberate and discuss things, and to be able to act on the matters of concern that have come up in their deliberation. So the essence of ESD is an evaluative process. And of course, we'll look later at how one evaluates this. So ESD competences in the subject disciplines can often be looked at as task sequences, where there are 2 dimensions, the acquisition of knowledge and the participation in ESD around the matters of concern. And that's reflected in the 4-quadrant model that sits alongside the UNESCO competencies that have been specified and that we work with regularly in our ESD work. So meaningful learning expands around intergenerational knowledge and the critical evaluation of the situation in which people are involved with their life experiences. And here we can learn to acquire concepts in relation to the content of a subject or the concerns in a local area. And this is reflected in quadrant 1, what can be known and understood through a subject discipline. And this is about the standard curriculum of the children acquiring knowledge that we're going to later assess and evaluate. How participants develop ESD competences with subject concepts and systems thinking in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. And what we were finding is that in the handprint care project, the teachers were really battling to make the relationship between what they're teaching and all of the ESD competences. And then into the mix, we thought, well, let's try to simplify it. So we came up with this idea of critical systems modeling, which is systems thinking, critical thinking, and problem solving. And this was very helpful for the teachers in their curriculum planning and then onto the evaluation of their programs, to be able to take a simplified view. And then the values, knowings, beings, and doings can be resolved, applied, and assessed in quadrants 3 and 4, where in ESD, through learner agency, we're trying to get the learners to take initiatives, explore ideas, and think positively. So reflexive modes of action, that is anticipation, the normative dimensions, the strategic dimensions in their work that they do together, the collaboration that is often involved in this deliberative work, and finally, G, the self-awareness that comes and the confidence that develops around this. So this was a simplified way of actually framing competencies for later evaluation, and also the competencies that come through the acquisition of knowledge and then participation in ESD as an evaluative process. The work on competences articulated really well with the Sustainable Development Goals as an evaluation tool that can normally be used in two ways. One is goals to be measured in an evaluation process, but often what's neglected is the idea of the concerns that are reflected and how these enable the students to deepen their understanding of the complexities around the matter of concern that they are examining or evaluating. And here you've got some students who are evaluating their local stream. They're using a mini-SAS process, and they came to work with the Sustainable Development Goals through a process of describing the context in which they were looking at the matter of concern, which was the pollution to Midmar Dam, the water supply to Pietermaritzburg and Durban, and the ethical purpose that was driving their concerns or their evaluative work, they deduced was the problems related to blockages and seepage from the manhole covers, increasing disease risk, and polluting the actual dam itself. When they, in the evaluative process, they combined their knowledge, they started to say, well, we need to look at the manhole covers, we need to understand how the blockages are concerned, and we need to develop education work. And this led to the proposed actions that they took to contact the municipal authorities and try to resolve the questions together. But my concern here is that in their evaluative work, it was really crucial to say, within the Sustainable Development Goals, or with the Sustainable Development Wheel, the goals for sustainability, their concern was with water. But they soon saw that there was an education concern that they had to actually take up in their evaluation work. Then there was health and well-being associated with this, and it could become the driver of the educational work that they were wanting to come up with. But there was poverty in the area, and the poverty was associated with the apartheid system and the history of exclusion in the area. So they needed to take up that concern, along with the problem of gender, with women being impacted on in terms of having to collect water. And of course, there was also a dimension of peace and justice that was deep within these concerns. And they were just starting by looking into all of these concerns and beginning to evaluate the wider picture by looking at the life in water. And a wider picture still was the question of climate and impacting on the water systems through dry periods when the pollution became particularly significant. So here we've got the evaluative work of the students needing the evaluation tool of the Sustainable Development Goals. And here are some references to explore, to deepen the question of the SDGs and competences for an ESD process as evaluative learning.